Welcome to painting a tulip in a loose watery style. In this video we will explore the techniques and tips for painting a beautiful tulip in a loose style using watercolor. Whether you are a seasoned artist or a beginner, in this video I will provide you with information you need to create a stunning flower. Normally before we start painting, we need to ensure that we have the right materials, the right brushes, the right paints, the right canvases, and it can all be too much. So in this section, I'm going to be taking you to my sketchbook. We're going to be throwing some paint down onto the page, and we're not even using watercolor paper. Oh my word, that's insane, right? Here we are in the sketchbook now. I'm opening it up to a blank page. You'll see on the right hand side there are 3 flowers that I painted in a previous video. I'll link that down below for you to catch when we're done here. And I'm taking my Winsor & Newton brush. It's a nice fat brush with a lot of bristles, and I'm going into the clean water and I'm just going to dab paint all over the page. So I'm starting where I want to actually have the flower, and I'm just pulling the leaves out and then dabbing all around the rest of the page where I would collect the water the most, basically. And then after that, once you've sufficiently wet the page, you will go into the lightest color that you have available. For me, this is this pink color, and I'm going to dab in what would be the background. So essentially I would like to have some blank flowers in the background. So I'm going to just go in lightly and loosely with a light tone for the background. Going into some more color now to create a background effect of leaves. So if I were to have a main flower in the front and then a faded background, there would be flowers in the background with green leaves. For this, you want to have a lighter tone of everything you're going to use for the background. If you ever touch down too dark with any color, you can always pick it up and then just dab it in somewhere else. And this is the beauty of loose painting. It doesn't have to be exact. In fact, the looser the better, because it's all in the illusion of actual petals. So once you're sufficiently happy with the background and you feel like you've dabbed in enough colored blobs all around, you can then go into the flower. So for this, I've picked up a purple color and I'm just going to loosely paint in the petals. And I'm just feeling it out. So I've got my main petal in the front, and for this I'm using the System 3 filbert brush, going into a little bit of an orange color to add more tonal range to the actual flower. And this is the part where it's also very loose, so it doesn't really matter where it spills out because that's part of the process. So the tulip has these types of long leaves with a bowl shape at the bottom. So that's the illusion that I want to create. And then you'll be able to see a little bit of a background petal. If you go and look at some reference pictures of a tulip, then you'll see what I mean, where they have these oval type of shaped petals. So that's what I'm recreating here. And the reference that I have seen online with the orange and the purple flowers is that the colors are very messy and they do bleed into each other all over the place. They're really beautiful, and some of them even have quite a vibrant yellow at the bottom. So you can add in these colors however you like, but for me I'm using a purple and orange and then painting in some main petals. I've got this smaller brush now, and I'm going into some purple to add a little bit more detail, and then just sketching it in, not being too precise in any way with it. And then once you add more water, you can pull out the colors some more. And then once the colors start to bleed, and that's when it becomes really beautiful. And I'm not using any watercolor paper, so that's why it's all sitting on the surface. It's moving around crazily. And that's part of the relaxing journey of painting these watercolor flowers that are bleeding all over the place. I'm not going to plot it up anywhere, and I'm going to leave it. I am being careful to leave some white space in between just to add some dimension to this painting. At the bottom, I'm adding the crimson color just to add the bottom darker tone to the dimension of this flower. And then in the background, well, not in the, and then in the back part of the flower petals, so you've got the main part in the front, and then there will be a bit more of a faded color at the back of these petals. I've just added some darker tone there to darken the whole vibe up a little bit. So at the side now, I'm adding in yellow. So these flowers that I saw online, they had all the colors in them, and they were really quite beautiful. At the stem now, I'm using a sap green, and I'm not going to tone it or even brush it out in any way. So I'm just dabbing it in the bottom, and I'm going to let it bleed up into the flower. Underneath, you can paint down a little bit of an oval shape to create a bit more of the stem there. I was looking at a few references online when I painted this, and I just researched tulip flowers. I think I researched red tulip flowers, and I was just basically looking around at all of them at once. I did not have one particular reference point that I used, so I'm just taking a collective of bits from everywhere really, and then pulling the stem down to the bottom of the page, also leaving a little bit of the white area open on the one side, as if light was coming in from the one side. I think when you're painting watercolor flowers or anything with watercolor, leaving the white of your paper showing is essential to having that light source and having that little bit of dimension. And then also with watercolors, one of the tricks that you need to know is not to overwork the flower or the painting too much, because then that's when it becomes flat and muddy. So working with watercolor is a delicate balance between having it splashed all over the place in a controlled way versus an uncontrolled way. Laying the color down however you like is also just good for fun. And this is why using a sketchbook for all of this is a really great place to start. If you're unsure of watercolor and how it works, you don't always need to have the best materials or the best paper or the best brushes. You can use whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you want to have fun with, and whatever you want to be free with. I think sometimes there's a bit of a misconception that to make good art you need to have the most expensive stuff. You really don't. Sometimes having the most expensive stuff can make you worried and scared of the process. So having something that you're comfortable with is easy, and you can just be free with it. So here I am just adding in color wherever I feel like I just want to darken it up a little bit. Watercolor always dries a few shades lighter. The page is still very wet, so I'm not going to get a lot of detail. Working wet on wet, you are going to get a lot of color bleed still. You're going to get lighter shades. If you pick the color up straight from the pan and blot it down onto the page, you will get a bit of a darker tone than if you were going to blot it out on a palette first and then go onto your page. If you want to add more detail, you can let it dry and then go in with your smaller brush afterwards, just to add extra lines and extra details, but that we can cover in a future video. So here with the full bit brush now, I just picked up a little bit of the color on the side. It was pooling a bit too much and I don't want it to take forever to dry, so that's why I've picked up that color there. But now you'll see I just went into the pan with the color, and then I just mixed it around on the side a little bit, just so that I can get the brush evenly wet with paint and full of pigment. And you can just go however you want with this, going in with wherever you want, color wherever you want, looking at your reference. It's all very suggestive, and that's the beauty of loose flower painting, or loose painting in general, is that you get the freedom to choose how you want it to look, and it will still look beautiful either way. So here for this one, I'm adding a little bit more lines. It's still very wet, so you can see it does bleed, but if you pick up the color or the pigment a lot on your brush and then you put it down immediately, you'll see that it does pool a little bit in a certain area, so you can get a substantial amount of detail. And especially since you've left the white parts of your page open where you have the most intense highlights, once you add the dark, it does show up so much more. And even though there's no detail to this flower and it's just a loose flower, there is a little bit of suggestive detail that is quite beautiful. So I'm just going to continue putting in a little bit more where I feel like, adding more colors here and there. And I'm really at this point so careful not to overwork the page, because that is one of the challenges with watercolor. It is so easy to keep going back and back and back, trying to work with color, work more lines, work whatever you feel like that's going to happen in the painting, and then honestly you can end up just ruining it and overdoing it. So here I'm blotting in a little bit more in the background because it did dry a lot lighter. So I'm blotting in this color in the background as if there were flowers faded in the background. I've got some green stems and I've got this other color going, and this just adds a little bit more dimension into the background. And there we go. That's it. I'm pretty much going to leave it right there. If you're still here at this point in the video, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for watching this video. I would love to hear in the comments down below what you enjoyed about this video and what you'd like to see more of. Give it a thumbs up, and until next time, happy painting. Bye for now.